and welcome to the SheClicks webinar. I'm Angela Nicholson and I'm the founder of SheClicks. Before we get going, we have a word from our sponsor. This webinar is sponsored by MPB, the world's largest platform for used photography and videography kit. MPB has transformed the way people buy, sell and trade equipment, making photography more accessible, affordable and sustainable. MPB is proud to partner with SheClicks to help support women photographers and their work. So thank you very much to MPB. Right, let's get started. I'm delighted to introduce our speaker, Laura Galbraith, a photographer and workshop leader. Hi, Laura, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Hi, Angela. Hi, everybody else.
It's lovely to see you.
Thank you.
So would you like to get started?
Yes, so basically I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Africa and visiting Africa, but also I realised that not everybody's going to be able to go to Africa, and so I thought I would talk a little bit about how I go about my wildlife photography. It's really weird doing webinars because you're just sitting here talking to a screen. So I'm just going to sit here and talk to my screen and hopefully share some information that you guys will find useful either in your photography or if you're ever planning any photography trip. So we're going to talk about Africa. Where exactly we're going to talk about are Kenya, the Masai Mara, Amboseli, Lake Nakuru, Botswana, Mashatu, South Africa, Malamala and Madikwe. And these are all the places that I have been recently. And I could spend hours, I could do 5 webinars just on Africa and the places that you can go and visit. But we'll have a look at these places and then you can take that into consideration when you're thinking about traveling yourselves. So Kenya has been voted many times as one of the best places to go and see the wildlife in Africa. And you imagine that the Masai Mara National Reserve, which is this big red spot on this map here, is this massive, great big place. But this red bit here is this tiny little green bit on the map of Kenya. So it's not as big as you would think it is. There's 2 options when you visit the Mara. You can visit the National Reserve, which is here, and you can also visit all of the conservancies, which are these ones around here. Okay, there are slightly different rules depending on where you go. The seasons, green season or low season is November to March. It's generally cheaper, it's generally less busy. There often is lots of baby animals about, and you can have grass, which can be an advantage or a hindrance depending on your thoughts on that. High season is from June to October-ish. It's more expensive. It's during the migration, so there's a possibility of crossings, and it's generally more busy. As I said before, you can either visit the Conservancy or the National Reserve. Now, there are different rules about where and when you can off-road in the Conservancy and the National Reserve, and I can't tell you exactly what they are at any one given time because sometimes they change. There are also different rules around the maximum number of vehicles per sighting. Now, you might wonder why that's important. Obviously, if you only have a couple of vehicles at a sighting, you will have the ability to move your vehicle potentially to a better position. If you have a lot of vehicles at a sighting, then you're going to be limited to what you can do. There are different rules, curfews. The Conservancy, there's still cattle grazing, so the grass is shorter in green season. In the National Reserve, cattle are banned, so you get long grass in green season. If you want to see crossings, you need to pick a camp near the river. And that might sound obvious, but it's not that obvious. Advantages and disadvantages of both, and rules and regulations in both are changeable. So you have to kind of work out what it is you want to do, what it is you want to see, and to then determine where you want to go. So first of all, I'm going to share you some pictures of images that were taken in the National Reserve back in 2018, which was the last time I was there. Now, all the pictures that I am showing you have all the details about how they were taken, what camera, what lens, what exposure, and everything else on them so that you can have a look and see the information. If you have any questions about any of that, please ask at the end. I'm more than happy to discuss why I do what and when and what the reasoning behind any of these were. So this is a lion in the National Reserve in green season. So you can see there is some longer grass, which is a complete pain in the backside sometimes, but it also is an amazing thing when you actually do manage to get an animal in the right place because it just makes the shot more interesting. This is one of the favorite things I ever get to do, which is take pictures of elephants. And this was taken again in 2018 in the National Reserve with the long grass. So there was an elephant There was a beautiful sky. We spent about half an hour with this guy just taking lots and lots and lots of different images of this elephant. The tree is also a gift. Cheetah in the Masai Mara, again, 2018. This is an example where it shows you when the grass can work. If you can get an animal in between all the grass without a piece of grass in front of its face, etc., then it just adds something to the picture, the long grass. This is one of my all-time favorite pictures. When I was on the vehicle on that particular day, there was 2 other photographers in the vehicle with me, and there were some giraffes over there on the horizon. And they were like, there was giraffes, and I was the only one that was pointing my camera at this particular lioness. And the lioness, I'll show you the next shot, was sat on a small termite mound, and another lioness approached her, and she wasn't best chuffed at the idea of this other lioness coming up and joining her on her termite mound. And I just managed to capture that shot. There's only one where she growled at the other lioness that was joining her. Always when you're trying to do wildlife photography, you're looking for behavior. You're looking for the animal to be doing something interesting. And it snarling at another lioness just was amazing for that to happen on that particular day. Once I'd taken that shot, she then stayed on her little termite mound. And then I added in the second shot, which is more of an environmental shot of her lying in the grass, just on that slightly up-raised hill. And I didn't get any pictures of the giraffes. I still haven't got a picture of a giraffe on a horizon line. It's still one of the things in my head that I would like to take, but I haven't managed it yet. I'm sure that I think that I probably am more happy with that image though, because I love it. Okay, moving on. So if you go to the conservancies in the green season, there's less vehicles, more youngsters. It's cheaper relative to high season. No curfews, so sunrise and sunset shots are easier. Cattle, there are cattle in this conservancy, so there's some grass short in some areas where there's longer grass. One of the things I love about being in the conservancies is the no curfews. So you can get out when it's almost still pitch dark and you can see sunrise and sunset, because you're so close to the equator. Sunrise and sunsets don't last very long. They last a matter of minutes. But if you can find an animal on the horizon and you can get below it and you've got an interesting sky and you can expose it correctly, then that's when some of the magic happens. This is a giraffe taken at sunrise in 2022 in January when I was in the Mara Conservancies. You can also quite often get the opportunity to backlight subjects. Okay, so that's just when the light, again, it doesn't last for very long, and you have to be lucky to get an animal in the right place and you ability to get into the right place to get this kind of thing. But again, when you manage to do this, you get a lovely, beautiful rim lighting around this cheetah. Now, I got 2 shots of this before that cheetah moved. I'm not sure whether it's a male or a female because I don't know what the name of that particular cheetah was. We pulled up, we saw the cheetah, we took 1 shot, we realized we were in completely the wrong position. We moved position. I got 2 more shots and then they moved. But that was one of those pictures that, I don't know if you ever get this, but you see something on the back of your camera and you're just praying that it looks as good on your computer screen as it does on the back of your camera, and it is actually sharp. So you can play with light when you have sunrise and sunset, but then you can also play with light when it's the middle of the day. This was taken with some elephants. It was about 11 o'clock. We were just about heading back, and there was a whole herd of elephants grazing in bushes. It was later on in the day, so the light was quite harsh, but what there was, because of the way the elephants were in and out the bushes, there was bits of light hitting bits of the elephants, if that makes sense. So if you massively underexpose it, I was drawn to the tusk and to the trunk and just the light hitting it. I managed to get a couple of shots off of this with my R6 and the 100 to 500. I then tried to take this with my longer lens, and it never actually happened again. And the elephant just didn't hold its head in just exactly the right position to get this. So I'm always looking for the light. I'm always looking for where the light is hitting an animal and whether or not that's going to get me a shot that's going to be interesting. This is one of my favorite ever lion sightings. When you see, I spent a whole morning pretty much all to myself with a pride of lions and these little ones. It was, when we found them, first of all, it was almost dark. It was impossible to take any pictures, but I spent hours just watching these guys. And of course, they all came down to drink. And of course, there is always one that doesn't get with the program and doesn't join in. And it would have been a perfect shot had this one here decided to join in with his brothers and sisters and have a drink. But it was still one of the most amazing things to watch, seeing all of them. Now, many of you will post on social media. According to social media, this is my best ever shot. It went viral last year, 60,000 likes. I went from 4,000 followers on Instagram to 8,000 followers on Instagram. Is it my best shot? I hope that you all don't necessarily think so. Is it a cute shot? Absolutely. Is it an amazing thing to have seen? Absolutely. Is it the most artistic, best shot that I've ever taken? Probably not, but it was still an amazing thing to see. This lion and this cub spent about 10-15 minutes just interacting with each other, and I was just trying to cut out as much as possible of the bits of grass that were in the way. And it is very cute and it is very likable. Talking about grass, this is Nalangu, who is a well-known leopard in the Masai Mara, and this is in 2022. I also get to see Nalangu in 2023. This is a kind of classic leopard walking in a shot. It was very dry in January last year when I went, hence why the grass is all brown. It's an absolutely perfectly good shot, but about 10 minutes later, she went into the bushes and I took this. And I personally think that's a far more interesting shot. But it's up to you. Which do you prefer? This is what I call traffic. And this is where you deliberately put branches in the way to make it more interesting shot. And most of the time as wildlife photographers, we're trying to take pictures without branches in the way. So why on earth would you put branches in the way? So here's another example of a serval. Okay, servals, when you get to see them in Africa, they're usually quite skittish, but this was the calmest, coolest, most chilled out serval I've ever met in the Mara, and this was taken in January 2023, so this was not that long ago. So straight out of camera, serval, it's kind of boring. There wasn't anything I could do with this that I could think of doing with that viewpoint. So we moved the vehicle, and that, I would guess, most of you would think is a better shot. But just because I think it's a better shot doesn't necessarily mean that you think it's a better shot, but it's something you might want to think about. The way that you do this is that the foliage has to be closer to your vehicle. The bigger the distance between the foliage and the animal, the more you can make the foliage mush. Okay, the more out of focus it can be. And you need to just have a little gap in it so that you can make sure that part of the serval or whatever animal it is you choose to do this with is in focus. So we're moving on back again, still in 2023, in the conservancies in the Mara. And this is Natito and her cub, who we got to see on a couple of occasions in January this year, and a leopard with its cub in nice light on a rock. There's quite a lot of traffic, but that's okay. I think this is a good shot. And then the cub went and sat on the rock in just gorgeous light, and that's probably my best ever leopard shot of a cub, just because it chose an absolutely beautiful position to sit on and an absolutely beautiful light on that particular day. And this is the same cub going for a stroll. Okay, typical. Get the paws in the right position, eyes, no backgrounds, no distractions in the background. Perfect. Now, one of the things I wanted to take you through is how a sighting works, what happens at a sighting. So I took one of the sightings that we saw this year in January. So we saw a cheetah. It was a cheetah male taking a stroll, checking scents and marking its territory. Now, if you see a male cheetah doing this, you have a pretty good idea what he's going to do next. And a lot of the time, wildlife are very unpredictable. But if you see a cheetah marking its territory, it's basically going to go from one tree mark its territory, to the next tree, have a sniff, mark its territory, to the next tree, have a sniff, mark its territory. So you have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen. So this male was taking a stroll. I don't know how many times we repositioned the vehicle, maybe 9, 10 times. 257 images to start with, from 7:08 a.m. to 8:15 a.m. So about an hour, okay? So first thing that I do is the first cull. Okay, so remove all with incorrect foot position, not looking up, eyes closed, annoying bits of grass. I don't know if any of you have ever watched any big cats walk, but they tend to one foot after the other, and quite often they've got the head down, and every so often they'll put the head up, and you're wanting the head up with the paws in the right position shot. So here's what I mean by head up and in the right position shot. So if I show you this one, nearly good. The feet are in the right position, but the mouth's open. There's no direct eye contact, and you have a slightly messy background. Take a few frames on, same cheetah, same sighting, just a little further on in the process. Feet in the good position, head up, and the background is much, much cleaner. You can't wait for that to happen. You have to shoot and keep shooting, and then later pick out the picture that has the best head up, head position, ear position, foot position, and not have lots of grass in the way, because you can't pay attention to all those things all at once. So that's a sort of classic cheetah walking towards you shot. So, okay, got that one. That one's good. Let's move on to the next thing that I thought about doing with this sighting. So side on, good eyes, cleanish background, and again, good feet. In general, you want one of the paws coming forwards to show movement forwards. Okay, so I've got that. So the next thing I'm thinking about is what can I do? So I tried putting it in some traffic when it went under one of a kind of low hanging tree. It just didn't work. This image just doesn't work. There's too much grass. There's just not enough cheetah. It just doesn't work. But we tried, and you've got to try to succeed. Then I was fascinated by the tail against the bark of the tree. So do you need the whole animal? Once you've got some shots of the whole animal, do you need the whole animal in the shot? Again, I'm not sure if this particular shot works, but it's something I might try again in the future, with textures, with fur and trunks and wood and all that kind of stuff. So not sure that worked, but it was worth a go. If you see something that interests you, then try and shoot it. In his environment, now this is deliberately shot at +2/3 to get the background this way. And this works beautifully when we had what we had. It was an overcast, bright, diffuse light. So if I'd shot this at neutral, I wouldn't have been able to have the sort of creamy, pastel-y background colors, even if everybody tells me you can adjust it in Photoshop. You think you can adjust a lot of things in Lightroom and you can adjust a lot of things in Photoshop, but there isn't also an element of the more you can get right in camera, the more that you can do. This wouldn't work if you try to achieve that. You don't get the washed out background if you don't overexpose it when you take the shot. Another predator appeared on the scene, a jackal. It only stayed like that for about 2 seconds. Doesn't work because the jackal has a big twig right in front of it. But again, that's not something you will necessarily notice when you're shooting. And also, for my liking, the horizon is too close to, it's almost like it's chopping the cheetah's head off. I would need to have got higher or got lower to move that, and it didn't hang around for long enough. At this point, I changed from my 400 with a 1.4 converter to the 400 with a 2.4 converter. I've got no idea. I can't remember exactly why I decided to do that at that particular moment. There will have been something that I saw that I thought I want to try and get that, and then that's why I changed it. Okay, so then next, the cheetah crosses the road. I absolutely love that you can see its claws on display. To make this shot better, I would like this second ear to be forward. Once you've taken a whole load of cheetah shots and you're looking for a better cheetah shot than you took before, you start noticing little bits and pieces that will make the shot that much better. So now I've done all the things I can think of. So the next thing I do is start playing massively with exposure and go for a high key cheetah shot. So this is at +2, deliberately shot so that this is the histogram for this particular shot. And you can see that I have shot it as close to it being overexposed, completely shot exposed to the right. And then you make it black and white in post, and you lose all the detail in the foreground, and you just get a contrast high key image. Now, again, this might not be to everybody's taste, and that's fine. You might like pictures in a slightly different way, but I'm encouraging you to try and do some different things. So thoughts. Throughout the whole sighting, the settings were similar. So I was at wide open aperture, whatever that was. So at 400, it'd be 2.8. At 1.4, it's f4, and at 800, it's 5.6. The shutter speed was a minimum of 1/640th of a second, and it went up to 1/1000th of a second as light improved. I was constantly looking for shapes, patterns, behavior, and the light. If I get one shot, I'm happy from any sighting. That's the result. The more times you go, the harder it is to get a better shot than you've taken before. So the first time you see any animal on any trip that you're photographing, it's very easy to get your best shot of that particular animal because you haven't got a better shot. You haven't got any other shots of that animal. So therefore, your first shot is the best shot. I usually completely fluff it up when I first see any particular piece of wildlife animal that I've never seen before, because I get so excited about seeing this new thing that I've never seen before that I actually forget how to use my camera. And I know it's one of my things. I just have to accept it. The first time I see it, I'm not going to take the best pictures. I will take better pictures the second time because I won't be quite so excited about the first time of seeing it. You have to be prepared to fail. If you aren't prepared to fail, you won't attempt different things. So I'm not saying go and do something interesting and difficult to start off with. If it's the first time you've ever seen a lion, or it's the first time you've ever seen a cheetah, take some take some normal everyday shots. And then once you've got them in the bag, think about what else you could do, assuming that the thing stays long enough for you to play with. No, my exposure is rarely at 0. I play with exposure a lot to get me the effect that I want to get. Okay, so that's taking you through a sighting. We're going to move on to a little bit more about where to go and what to do and when. So Mara Triangle for a migration. If you can go and see migration, it is one of the most amazing things to witness, to be there, to see, to feel, because you can see it on the telly. Everybody's possibly seen a crossing on the telly. There is nothing like, you don't get the sound, you don't get the sound of all the hoofs, you don't get the energy, you don't get the smells, you just don't, it's just not the same when you watch it on the telly. You usually don't have long when you're doing crossings. If you want to see crossings, you need to stay in a camp near the crossing points, because if, for example, you were staying in one of the conservancies, the drive to a crossing point can be up to 2 hours. So that's not the best place. If the reason for you to going to the Mara is to see crossings, you'd be better off in the Triangle or in the National Reserve. You also need to be on the right side of the rivers, as ideally you want the crossing happening towards you. And last year, most of the good crossings happened in the Mara Triangle. So I managed to do Migrations Fry in 2018, and this is one of my favourite shots from it, and it's one that's won quite well in competitions. And it was taken with a 1DX Mark II and my 500mm prime, and you'll notice I'm at -2/3 exposure. I wasn't shooting everything at zero at that point either. So if you can get a crossing and you can get dust, then magic happens. We also had some wildebeest jumping on this particular one. So I was in a vehicle with a very an amazing photographer, Alistair Smith, and he was spotting things for us. So he would say, oh, there's jumping going over there. Oh, look, there's a crocodile down there. And he was pointing things out, because when you're pointing a very long lens at something and you're totally engrossed in a part of the scene, you possibly don't see the whole scene. When you go to the Mara Triangle you still get all the usual suspects. So you still get lions, you still get giraffe. This is still one of my favorite shots of a giraffe, 2018. We'd stopped for breakfast and this giraffe was lying down just not far. It's not something you see them do very often, so it's really cool when you do see them do it. And again, same treatment as the cheetah. It was deliberately shot at +1 1/3. I knew I was going to make it black and white. High key black and white pictures are great if you can do them in particular light. 2019, I've moved on to a 5D Mark IV at this point. My camera's constantly changing. I'm not a great fan of taking pictures at kill shots. There's one more shot later on. I'm looking usually when we're if we're at a kill for eyes and bits of animals, and preferably as little gore as possible. I don't like particularly gory shots. Again, up to you guys what you do. If it rains, it's a gift. This rain lasted for about 10 minutes. And if it's raining, my biggest tip is play with your shutter speed. Just go fast, go slow. Ignore all the normal rules about having to be at 500th of a second for anything that's wildlife. Usually I would be at minimum 500th of a second. Play with shutter speed. This one was taken at 400th of a second. I did take ones that's lower than that, but you have to play with it because it depends on how heavy the rain is, what effect you get. There is no, if you take it at X shutter speed, you will get streaks, and if you take it at X shutter speed, you will get dots of just, you have to play with it and just take loads and loads and loads and loads and loads, because even the shot after this and the shot before this, it doesn't look as good. The rain looks better in this shot. So if it's raining, play with your shutter speed and just take as many shots as you can whilst it's actually raining, and adjust it constantly because the rain changes all the time. And again, do you need the whole animal? This is again another one of my favorite shots, and it's purely one zebra with another zebra against it. It's one of the best zebra sightings I've ever had. There must have been about 200 zebra across the road. So we just parked the vehicle kind of in the middle of them and just sat there for an hour, and I just played with shapes, I played with textures, I played with little ones, big ones, and all sorts of different things. And you would think with a white animal I would be at minus, but I was at plus 1/3 exposure to get the white so that it was white without it being overexposed, because there's a lot of white in that picture. Okay, so next, Amboseli. Amboseli is one of my happy places. For any of you that follows me on Instagram or Facebook will know that the elephants, I am the mad elephant lady. It's a national park known for its large herds of elephants. You can get views of Mount Kilimanjaro when there's no cloud cover. Don't go to Amboseli for a couple of days and expect definitely 100% that you'll see Kili. It's quite often behind the clouds. You might see it for the 2 days, but you might not see it at all. The lake bed is dry for large parts of the year. And at the moment, it's recently been suffering from a drought. You might have seen stuff in the newspapers and on social media, but I follow a few things in Amboseli, and it has rained over the last few days, which is amazing. My favourite ever elephant sighting, this lasted for 10 minutes, sunrise with an elephant in front of it. And the thing that finishes this shot is the little egret that's just underneath the elephant's belly. The egrets and the elephants go together in Amboseli because the elephants kick up all the, when they're grazing, they kick up all the little insects, and the egrets come and eat that as a result. So they are very often close together. Now, the reason Amboseli is one of my happy places is because I got to do this. This is Amboseli Lake Bed. This is me and Debbie there back in 2018. And I'll play the video so that you can see. Okay, so that video was taken with Andrew Beck, who was our guide on that particular day. and you probably won't see people out of vehicles in Africa very often. If you look at the start of the video, you will see that we are in the, you can see the big shade, we are right next to the vehicle. So we're completely safe. The elephants are not in the slightest bit bothered, because all the elephants see is the outline of our vehicle. You have to make sure that you're there with a guide who knows what they're doing. But being able to get out the vehicle and get low means that you get shots like this, which you would not get if you were shooting out of the side of the vehicle. So this is Amboseli lake bed on with some elephants, and it's absolutely amazing when the elephants walk past. That video had sound. That video was what it sounds like when the elephants walk past. All you could hear was our shutters going off. You would think a group of elephants that size walking across the lake bed would make a noise, but they don't. They're so silent, it's unbelievable, and it's quite magical. Yeah, I did warn you I was the mad elephant lady. You didn't believe me, maybe. Heat haze. Now, some people will say don't shoot in heat haze. My thoughts are that's just something that you need to play with. I like this shot. I like the fact that it's slightly different, because the heat haze is making the bottom part of the elephant look slightly different. The top part of the elephant is sharp, so it works for me. It might not work for you. You might hate it, and that's fine. But don't necessarily follow the rules. Don't say I can't shoot because it's got heat haze. Shoot, see what you like. You might like it, you might not like it. You might decide it's not for you. That's fine. But do try. This is one of the big tuskers from Amboseli. I don't know exactly which one it is, but we basically put the vehicle down on the road, and the vehicle was slightly lower than the elephant, and so we got to shoot lower than that. And again, shot overexposed because I wanted to blow out, do a high key image, and that was one of them. Okay, so one of the other rules of wildlife photography is don't shoot at 11 o'clock, don't shoot in the middle of the day. Well, this was shot in the middle of the day. We were on the way back, and a herd of elephants came and said hello, and so I shot, and I would say it worked out just fine. This one is at 0 exposure, because the amount, that's what the exposure needed to be. And I'm at quite a low 1/250th of a second. I probably should have been faster than that on that particular day, but that was shot at 85mm. So you have an idea of how close the elephants were to us. Now, the shot that everybody wants, and this is not a perfect example, lots of people have much, much better examples, is an elephant that in front of Mount Kilimanjaro. This is Kilimanjaro, and we were lucky enough, we did get a couple of elephants. I want to go back and try this again. This is not the picture that I want. It's not the picture that I have in my head, but it's a good start. And I do very, very occasionally take landscape pictures when something really cool happens. So this is Kili with some really cool, interesting clouds. This was a 10 portrait shot panorama. Okay, so I shot this with a 24-105 at 105, and I shot 10 shots in portrait to make it a landscape panorama. I didn't have a wide enough angle lens to get all of that in, so I did what I could with what I had. We were lucky enough on that particular trip that a zebra decided to go into the water. So the water was quite shallow, and there's lots of really cool, interesting birds that you can take pictures of here on Amboseli. Amboseli is quite small, but again, shot so that we could do a high key black and white. And then this shot has done well again. One zebra at sunset in Amboseli, and just to prove it, you do get lions there as well. There are lions as well, and all the other normal bits and pieces. Okay, Lake Nakuru. It was famous for its lake with flamingos, but the changes in the lake means that there aren't as many as there was before. Every wildlife photographer will have a nemesis species. Mine is rhino. Every time I went to Africa, I don't know what the rhinos did, but they all hid. I finally got to take some pictures of rhino when I was in Lake Nakuru. It's also home to Rothschild's giraffes. The reserve is completely fenced in, so no migration of wildlife through the park, and has the most beautiful fever tree forests. So I haven't got very many pictures of a rhino, but I was quite happy with this one. This one was shortlisted in Wild Art a couple of years ago, and the rhino there at the time still had their horns. I don't know if they do now, but a lot of rhino that you will see pictures of nowadays have their horns removed because of poaching. And it just horrifies me that we have to take chainsaws to rhinos' horns to prevent them being killed by. Oh, it's just the whole thing is just horrific. But anyway, Lake Nakuru water and the fever tree forests that look like this, and they're just beautiful in the background. There are Rothschild's giraffes in Lake Nakuru. Now, don't ask me to tell you don't ask me which different giraffe. There's several different species. They all have ever so slightly different patterns in their fur. This is a Rothschild's one. Don't ask me to tell you which one's which, because I wouldn't be able to tell you. Last year, I managed to go to Botswana, to Mashatu. It's unfenced. It's a completely different landscape to the Mara. Many, many more bushes, lots of elephants. They have a low-level hide there, and it's known for its leopard density. It's not known for its cheetahs. So, of course, on the first night, we came across a 5-cheetah coalition. It's not common to see a 5-cheetah coalition, and it's not common to see a 5-cheetah coalition in Mashatu, but we'll take what we can get. And again, this is another kill shot, and I was looking for an eye through this. Some people like them, some people don't. It's not my favorite thing to do, but when that presents itself, I will shoot it. Now, one of the beauties of when you go to Mashatu is that they have this hide. So this is my favorite, and this was shot with my phone. It's a time lapse of what happened, and I'll let you see it, and then I'll tell you what happened.
Okay,
so the hide is basically, they've taken 2 shipping containers and they've put them in the ground so that you're sat at the level of the waterhole. There's no feeding goes on, it's just the waterhole that's the interesting thing. And as I explained to you, I'm the mad elephant lady. All these elephants came in and I was just absolutely overwhelmed to be that close to an elephant that I haven't edited all the shots. I was completely fascinated by, let me just go on to the next slide rather than show you that again. I was completely fascinated by the elephants and them drinking and the water coming off their trunks. So that's probably my favorite shot so far. But this was only just last year and I haven't edited everything from it yet. But being in the hide there was quite an experience. It was very interesting to see all the different animals coming down. And I tried to do some wide angle shots with the elephants, but I was completely overwhelmed by all those amazing elephants that I didn't pull it off properly. I need to go back and I need to spend several days there, I think, is the answer to that. And then I shouldn't be overwhelmed. Mashatu is also known for its leopards. One of the people who was on the trip had been on 13 safaris and hadn't managed to see a leopard. So her nemesis species was a leopard. We fixed that in a big way. We spent a lot of time with some amazing leopards. This one at the bottom of a tree. This one in the tree. If they just put the head slightly further forward, I would have been even more perfect. And then we spent some time with a leopard called COVID, who liked to fish for catfish. And again, do you need the whole animal? I really like this shot. This is completely different. It's just the leopard's tail in a reflection. Now we're moving on to South Africa and Malamala. And Malamala is part of the Sabi Sands. There are very strict rules as to where each lodge guests are allowed to drive. Again, it's a bushy landscape. Again, it's known for its leopards. Vehicles literally drive anywhere. Who needs roads? I mean, if we were following a leopard, we literally drove over bushes. Apparently, the guides know which bushes that they can drive over. So they would just drive over a bush and it would like go underneath us, and then if you watched out the back, it would just like almost spring back into, it's like you would see it in a cartoon. The thing that you can do in in this particular reserve is you can do spotlighting. It is expensive, however. And I'm going to go to another shot of how about just a paw. This was an amazing sighting with a leopard up a tree, with a jackal and a lioness at the bottom of the tree, both trying to get in the tree to get the kill from the leopard. The leopard was way far up in the branches. There was no way that the lioness or the jackal were going to get anywhere near the leopard, but they could smell that there was a potential dinner, and they were hoping that the leopard might just drop something. We were there for a while. I was just watching, and the leopard just put her head down for a couple of seconds, and I just saw this and the paw and the kill. I liked that shot. I thought that was something different. Okay, we managed to see a very young leopard cub, and again, there's lots of traffic, but you can still see an eye, and I again like that shot. Something a little bit different. You don't always have to have no branches. Sometimes you just make the branches work for you, if you can get the right angle. If you're lucky, there they have the sand river, and you might get a lion on the sand. So this is, you'll see in a little while that this is a young male lion. You can tell there's a young male because he's not quite come into his mane yet. And then there was a lioness very close by, and this is a 5-shot panoramic shot. Okay, so I couldn't, with my 400mm lens, get this all in one shot. So what I did was I shot it as 5 shots panoramic, and then made it a portrait orientation, and then stitched it together in Lightroom. I could have changed cameras and gone to a wider angle, but my wider angle is a 100 to 500, and I don't get 2.8. I get 4.5 at 100 and 7.1 at 500. So I would have been not at 2.8. And if I hadn't shot this at 2.8, I wouldn't have completely lost the focus and had this out all blown out. So I did do that. I shot it. I did the panel shot. I did everything I could think of with the 400mm lens, because she was very obliging and she stayed there for a long time. And then I got my other camera out with my 100 to 500 on, and I took the same shot. It doesn't work in the same way. I've written a blog on this, actually. It's on my website, on using a longer lens and taking panel shots to get you a bigger file and to get you the depth of field that you want. And if any of you want to have a wee look, search on Laura Galbraith photography. There's not very many blogs there. I keep planning to write more blogs, but there is one on why I do this particular technique. And what we got to do with these 2 lions, the young male and the female, is we got to do some spotlighting. Now there is a family connection here. The lioness and the young male lion are originally from the same pride. The young male lion had kind of been chucked out because he's too old now. So they could be they could be cousins, they could be siblings. There's some familial relationship between the 2 of them. And in the evening, we did some spotlighting. And again, this is another video from Andrew, and this shows you what spotlighting is like. Okay, so it's got to be one of the most difficult things I've ever tried to do, spotlighting. It's pitch dark. You're trying to take images with moving vehicles, moving lights. It's basically pandemonium. Ideally, you want another vehicle to be shining the light. In the previous video, there was a couple of other vehicles, both shining the light on the lioness and the lion to show their guests in the vehicle, the lion and the lioness. It's the most challenging photography I have ever attempted. You're on completely manual. I was using eye autofocus, but you can just use this. If you don't have eye autofocus, if you're not mirrorless, you can just use a cluster, like the rectangle where you've got the 9 focus points, and your camera should pick up the edge. It's lots of fun. You're going to miss it. You're going to muck it up. But if you win big, because I managed to get this shot of the 2 of them when they actually met each other. And this one's called Kissing Cousins. I don't usually title my images because I'm absolutely useless. Ask me to do pictures, do not ask me to do words. But this one's called Kissing Cousins, and it was taken in Malamala. And it's a lot of fun, but we had been practicing on other subjects for nights. We was on fully manual, and I worked out on fully manual that if I tried to get my light meter on my camera, so you understand if you're on fully manual, your exposure meter at the bottom of your viewfinder becomes a light meter. And so I was trying to keep it at approximately -1/3 because that seemed to work. We were at I was at 1/160 of a second, f2.8, ISO 4000. So I'm trying to hold a 400mm lens with a camera on the end, point it in the right direction, get the settings right in pitch darkness. Best fun I've had in years. And when you actually manage to get a shot, you get some really cool shots. And then this one was taken when another night, I think it was the next night, when the 3 male lions that are in that territory went for a wander. And again, there was lots of vehicles, there was lots of lights, and we were just lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time when one walked past and another vehicle was shining the light on it. And again, pandemonium. You need a fast lens if you're going to do this. You need a 2.8 lens, whatever that was. This was shot with a 70-200 at 104mm, so you know how close that lion was to me. Okay, the last place I think that we're going to talk about is South Africa, Madikwe. Madikwe is fenced. It's the 5th largest park, and so it's less well known and is less expensive. Has a pack of wild dogs. Unfortunately, they didn't come out to play. One of the ladies that was in the vehicle with me was desperate to see the wild dogs, but they decided that they were staying on the hill where we couldn't see them. You have Burchell zebra. So Burchell zebra look different from the zebra that you get in the Masai Mara because they have a ghost stripe, and I'll show you a picture to show you. In the dry season, there's a possibility of dust and light shots at the dam, and as you've probably figured out by now, I like trying to play with dust and light. So this is a Burchell zebra. Okay, the ghost stripe is the slightly grey stripe in between the black and white stripes. They look their legs also look completely different than a plain zebra that you would see in the Masai Mara. And you can see that here. Two young stallions decided that they were going to have a fight for dominance. Now, you always envisage that zebra are these calm, placid animals. Well, when the 2 young males decided that they were deciding who was the most dominant, no, they're not calm and placid. This was all out fisticuffs. They were not being nice to each other. Not entirely sure which one won. They knew which one won. We didn't have the faintest idea. Okay, so this one is an elephant taken at the dam at sunrise. So it's lit behind, and we were just lucky enough that there were some elephants for the few minutes that we had. Shot at -2 1/3. Shot with my 100-500, so it's at f7.1, but for this it doesn't matter. And then we did also have a rhino appear at the dam as well, and it kicked up some dust, so you can get dust, light, and an interesting subject. I can't beat it. Lots of fun. Okay, so developing your photography. So no matter what you're taking pictures of, I encourage you to play with your composition. Do you need all of the animal? Watch for the light. So watch to see where the light is hitting the animal. You might be able to move yourself to move where the light is hitting the animal. You might have to wait for the animal to move. Play with your exposure. Be prepared to fail. To get truly interesting images, you need to push the boundaries. Playing it safe will result in safe images. If you're planning a safari, you need to think, the most important thing you need to decide is, what do you want to see? So you know I'm the mad elephant lady, so I like to go to places where there's going to be a whole load of elephants. You might be wanting to see a leopard. You might want to see wild dogs. There are certain places in Africa that you can up your chances of seeing those particular species. So if there is a particular species that you want to see, make sure that wherever you are visiting has that particular species, because it's not automatic that they all have all of them. You have to think about your budget. Safaris are more expensive holidays than your average summer holiday, but you have to remember that on pretty much every safari that you go on, so if you go to the Masai Mara and you stay in a camp, you're effectively all inclusive. Your food, your drinks, and pretty much everything else is usually covered. So although it's a much bigger chunk of money that you're handing out at the beginning of the trip. You're not then having to go to the water park. You're not then having to pay for taxis. You're not paying for drinks. You're not paying for food. So you have to factor in how much you would spend usually on that and take that into consideration. All you will need most of the time when you're on safari is money for tips. So you need to take all that into consideration, because that will have an impact on where you will go. If you want to take photographs, I would make sure you are going on a photographic trip. The difference between a photographic trip and a normal safari is the photographers want to hang out at sightings for much longer. So they're not there just to tick a box saying I've seen a lion. They're there to arrive, to look at the lions, to try and work out what the best photo of the lion that they can get, depending on what the lions are doing. And so they're going to want to hang out at sightings. They're going to want to wait for the sun to just be in the right position behind an animal. So if you're going on a trip and you want to take photographs, try and make sure that you are on a photographic, I can't even say that word, a photographic trip. Okay. You will have seen in the bio that I am, this year, the first time I am one of the photographers on a trip run by a company called Wild Eye. 2023 is sold out, 2024 is sold out. There is still 3 spaces on 2025. If you are in any way interested in traveling with me, then do find my website, find my Facebook, find my Instagram, find something, and it will take you there. If you have any questions about traveling on safari, say you've already got a trip booked and you want to know what lens or what kit you should take based on what you have, then feel free to send me a message. I will try and answer your question to the best of my ability, regardless of whether you're traveling with me. If you want to come and play in the UK, I run a variety of workshops in the east of England and East Anglia through Going Digital. If you use the voucher code GD SheClicks, you will get a £10 discount on any Going Digital workshop in the UK, and that's been in place pretty much since SheClicks started. It's been going for quite a few years. So if you join a workshop in the east of England or in East Anglia, you'll get me as your tutor. If you do another workshop somewhere else, you'll get one of my colleagues. Doesn't matter which one you go for. If you use the voucher code GD SheClicks, you will get a £10 discount on the trip, the workshop. Okay, and that's me done. And we're over to questions, and I got through that really quickly, which means I must have talked really fast.
Dick, thanks very much. No, that was great.
No problem.
And we do have some questions.
Okay, go, hit me.
Let's go. All right. With your shots of the leopards and other cats through the grass and the cub walking, you appear to be at a very low angle. How low were you? Were you actually lying on the ground?
No. For any of the shots with a big cat in it, no, we're in a vehicle. And what you have to try and do is work with the terrain that you have. Okay, so it's not always possible, but if you go to a place where they're used to photographers, the drivers will try and get you beneath the animal. Okay, it's the same with the shots where you're trying to do sunrises and sunsets. There are certain places that you know that they might be, and they can try and get you below. So no, and not with big cats, not out the vehicle, no. And Amboseli on the lake bed with the elephants, yes, we were out the vehicle, and sometimes I was lying on my front. But you're out the vehicle, but right next to it. But if there's a big cat about, you're not out the vehicle. Some places have a photography vehicle. And what the photography vehicle has is at the side of the vehicle then flips down. So it then means that you can be about a foot lower, and then you're lying on your tummy in the bed, in a vehicle with shooting out the side. Does that make sense? On a platform. And so if there is a photography vehicle available and you can use it, then do that. But no, you just have to try and get your driver to work with the terrain that you have and try and get underneath them if at all possible.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a very sensible move. There's a couple of questions about the spotlighting that you showed a little video of that.
Yep.
First one, are the lights red so to not distract the animals?
Right, so there are very strict rules about which animals you're allowed to point the lights at. So you're not allowed to point any of the big cats are fine because it doesn't bother them, but any of the antelope and that kind of things, because they're diurnal, that you can't point the lights at them, okay? Because that will disturb their eyesight and therefore then make them will effectively blind, well, just like you would be, it will affect their vision for a period of time, and that then makes them vulnerable. So there are very strict rules when you're doing spotlighting as to what you can point the spotlight at. So no, they're normal, everyday, they're just like a big flashlight with with a battery on it. Yeah.
Okay, so they're not red.
But there are very strict rules about what you are and are not allowed to do to make sure that pretty much the rules on every safari is that you're not allowed to do anything that's going to have an effect, a negative effect on the animals.
Okay.
So as long as you basically follow the rules, then you'll be fine.
And are there rules about the frequency with which the spotlighting can be done?
Not that I'm aware of, but then it's only a very short period of time that you do, because basically it's the end of the night, so it's like maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, and then we all have to be back in camp. So it's only a very small window of opportunity. We're not doing this all night every night, and in fact there might be 3 or 4 vehicles out trying to do it, but some nights you just don't find anything to point your spotlight at. So it's not like every night there's like 45 minutes where this poor lion gets a spotlight shone at it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Have you found there to be a huge difference between using an SLR and a mirrorless camera?
Yes. Okay.
Elaborate.
Yeah, no, I will. I was really worried about moving from DSLR to mirrorless, and there's a reason for that. So I can't watch 3D movies. I can't look through binoculars because both of them make me feel nauseous. So I was really concerned about whether an electronic viewfinder and me would get on. The idea of looking through my camera and feeling nauseous was a bit of an issue. I did buy one. I bought an R5, and so there's a couple of things I love about the mirrorless camera. The first is, well, it's smaller and it's lighter. The second is you can put the focus point anywhere you like. You're not restricted to, no matter which DSLR you have, doesn't matter how high-end a DSLR it is, there are certain points that you can put the focus point, and the next one to it might be halfway between where you want it to be. Whereas with a mirrorless camera, you can pretty much put the focus point wherever you want. It's a game changer in terms of being able to see the exposure that it's not perfect, it's far from perfect, but it's a game changer in terms of being able to see the exposure that you're likely to get as a result of any adjustments to your exposure that you get. And the last thing is the R5 gives me 45 megapixels. And when you're shooting things that tend to be really far away, having extra megapixels just means you have the ability to crop much more. Now, having said all of that, one of the things that I get asked most often on my workshops is what is the best camera to have, and there's a very simple answer to that, and it's the one you have with you and you know how to use. So if you know how to use your DSLR and you're comfortable with it and you can use it quickly in situations, you're going to be better with that than buying a mirrorless camera. It doesn't matter. It's taken me I used to be able, so I had a 5D Mark IV before I had an R5, and I could work it in pitch dark without even thinking about it. Like when you get into your car and you drive and you just drive without thinking about it because you're unconsciously competent at using your car. You have to become unconsciously competent at using your camera. That's more important than which camera it is that you're using. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yes,
yeah.
I love my mirrorless camera, and I did do one trip where I had a DSLR and I had a mirrorless, and the mirrorless and going between the two I found way too difficult. So I now have 2 mirrorless cameras. So hopefully that answers the question. But don't go buying a new kit. If you know how to use the one that you have, that's far more important than having a new piece of kit.
Yeah, and certainly if you're going to buy a new piece of kit, don't buy it the week before you go away on a safari.
No.
That's not the right time. Do you use, one thing you didn't mention, which I was expecting you to mention about when you were talking about mirrorless cameras, eye detection?
Yes, but not all the time. Okay, it doesn't work on leopards, doesn't work on cheetahs. For obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Okay, there's too many spots. There's far too many things for it to detect.
Yeah.
So I think if you're a new photographer coming into photography now, you'll probably use eye auto detect much more than I will, but I'm used to moving my focus point about. So I guess you stick with what you know. Does that, I think we all do that. So most often I am one single point focus and I'm moving it about, but I have it set on my camera that I don't have to press any buttons. There's a little joysticky controller in the back of my camera, and it just that's all it does. That particular one just adjusts where my focus point is. And I actually have, so I have my camera set up to back button focus, and I have 2 buttons set up for back button focus. So one of them is the one focus point that I can move about, and the other one is eye auto detect, and then all I have to do is move my thumb from one to the other. For those of you who don't know what back button focus is, your camera usually shutter button focuses. So when you have to press your shutter button, the camera focuses, and then you fully depress it to take a shot. What you can do is you can set another button to allow you to get the focus, and that's what back button focus does, and that allows you to have 2 different focus options. And in fact, I've read a whole load of articles, and some people are now doing 3 on the R5, but I can't think of what other one you would want other than single and eye. But again, different people do different things, so what works for them might not work for you, so have a read.
Yeah, I think one of the issues with eye detection is that, like you say, there's a certain level of control freakiness, and you have to relax. And say there are some animals it won't work with, like leopards and stuff. I've found quite a few cameras with eye detection struggle with otters. Weirdly, it thinks their ears are their eyes.
Yeah, but that's because the otter's eyes are dark and their fur is dark, so there's not enough contrast between the two. It also somewhat depends on how much light you have. My eye detect on my R5 is set up so that instead of it looking at the full viewfinder, it deliberately looks at wherever I have put my focus point first. So I have it set to that, so that even when I'm using eye auto detect, I haven't completely given up on and I see lots of things on Facebook groups saying, I was trying to do this and the eye detect didn't work, but they're trying to take a picture of something like an otter, and quite often it's wet and there's no contrast, and they've taken it in really low light and they're expecting miracles from the camera. It's amazing when it works, but it doesn't work all the time.
Yeah. That said, I mean, I photographed some Canada geese, not the most exciting animals in the world, but they've got black heads and black eyes, and I couldn't actually see their eyes. And the camera got it, which is amazing.
All right.
But
that is cool.
Sort of test it out. If it doesn't work with that animal, then switch, do something else. But yeah, generally that was quite a long answer, but basically there's quite a lot of advantages to mirrorless cameras.
Yes.
Okay. What variety of lenses do you tend to bring? The person assumes that you do you use 2 camera bodies? Do you use just 2 lenses attached to those cameras, or do you bring extra lenses and change them?
Okay, all right. So when I'm on safari, I have 2 cameras and always 2 lenses. So one camera body has a 400 2.8 on it, always. And one body has the 100 to 500, the Canon 100 to 500 on it for most of the time. Early in the morning and later at night, when there might be the possibility that I'm wanting to use a wide angle, then the 100 to 500 gets replaced with a 15 to 35 or a 2470, something wider. Okay, and I always have 2 cameras, and I have to have matching cameras, because I know I have one friend who I have been on a trip with, and she had one Nikon camera and one Canon camera, and I was well impressed that she managed, because everything on Nikon and Canon are kind of the opposite, and she could pick one up and the other. I can't do that. I have to have matching. So I used to have an R5 and an R6, because although they're not exactly the same camera, all the buttons are in the same place. So before I shot with a 7D2 and a 5D3, and again, buttons are in the same place, although they're not the same camera. So I have 2 cameras that have the buttons in that's very similar place, so that I'm not necessarily aware of which camera I have in my hands. One has a long lens on it, long prime lens on it, and one has a zoom lens on it. If you don't have a prime lens, what I would then do is have 2 camera bodies, one with the zoom longer lens and one with some sort of wider angle, so that you've got both of those options available to you at all times, because it's much easier to try and pick up a different camera than it is to be faffing about trying to change lenses when something exciting is going on. I am not the fastest at reacting to things when they're happening. So I need to keep everything as simple as possible, because otherwise I'm going to miss even more shots than I would normally, because I'm not the fastest on the draw. I know quite often some of my students, I'll say to them, are you shooting this, are you doing this, are you doing that? And they've got all the shots and I haven't even got my camera up to my eye yet. So I have to keep things simple. Other people can do better than that. But yeah, 2 cameras that are the same operationally.
Okay.
If not exactly the same model, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you always shoot in a particular exposure mode? Like, do you always use manual or aperture priority or?
Okay, so I shoot with my cameras on manual auto ISO. Now, that works for most cameras. Why do I do that? And the reason I do that is because the things I care about are the depth of field, so the aperture, and the shutter speed. I actually don't care about the ISO. Now, people get very excited about ISO. You've got to have a low enough ISO that you've got to do this. I reckon you're better off with a sharp, noisy shot that you can do something with than an unsharp shot because you've got camera shake or you've got motion blur, whichever one you happen to have. Okay. And so I don't care about ISO because you can fix that. There are pieces of software that can fix that. And even if you can't fix it and you've got a really, really grainy shot, you just make it black and white, because everybody expects grain and black and white pictures. So you just do that. So yeah, I shoot manual auto ISO, but not all cameras will let you shoot manual auto ISO and then exposure compensate. So some of the old, so for example, a 5D3, I can't do Nikon because I shoot Canon, but a 5D3 wouldn't allow you to do that. So if I was shooting a 5D3, I would be in aperture priority. I would be setting the aperture and I would be adjusting my shutter speed to how I want it by adjusting the ISO. You kind of have, it doesn't matter how you get there. You have to work out something that works for your brain, your manual dexterity, and how it works for you. I've sat with photographers who shoot completely manual, and that works with their brain. I'm probably dyslexic, so what works with my brain and what works with your brain is going to be totally different. So you just have to find, it doesn't matter what mode you use, you have to find one that works for you, that allows you to react fast enough to whatever's going on in front of you to get the shot. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And lots of cameras now allow you, when you use auto ISO, you can set the highest level. So if you think, oh, my camera's just terrible at that level, you can prevent it from going that high. So.
Yes, and even a lot of cameras nowadays, if you're shooting an aperture priority, you can set the minimum shutter speed that you want it to decide. And that's why the camera you know how to use is going to be much more useful to you than someone handing you a camera that might be twice as expensive as your camera, but you don't know how to use it.
Yeah, okay. This person read in your webinar description that you do pet portrait sessions in your studio when you're not teaching or shooting wildlife. What would you say are the main differences and similarities in how you approach wildlife photography versus pet photography? Also, do you run workshops or webinars on pet photography?
Yes. So you can come to my studio and I will do you a day's teaching you how to do creative portraits using a studio. So the similarities are the dogs are never trained, so they never do what you want them to do. Guess what? The wildlife never does what you want it to do. You have to be fast. The difference is instead of using your camera to do the lighting, you're doing it all, your camera's pretty much set at the one setting and you're doing all the control of the light by using the light. So in that respect, it's completely different. And the only way for me to explain all of that would be to do another webinar on pet photography. But yes, I do teach it and you're more than welcome to join. And there are ones in my studios in Burwell in Cambridge. Yeah, I basically teach it the same way as I do this webinar, from basics. If you want to come, and I'm more than happy to help you. And I have a pet photography page. So on Facebook, if you want to see pictures that I take of pets, on Instagram, it's Laura Galbraith. Instead of Laura Galbraith Photography, it's Laura Galbraith Pets. And on Facebook, it's Laura Galbraith Pets. Because Instagram and Facebook don't like it when you put wildlife and pet pictures in the same feed.
Okay.
People like wildlife pictures to be wildlife, and they like pet pictures. Yeah.
My dog's wild.
Your dog's cute. You should bring him to the studio.
I really should. Yeah. The thing is, actually, as soon as I show a biscuit to make him look in the right direction, he closes his mouth and he looks really annoyed.
Okay. All right. So there's all sorts of techniques. I have, when I'm shooting pets, I have a lace that has on it a whole load of weird and wonderful hunting calls, which make really weird and wonderful noises. And the reason they're on is because I can then put them in my mouth. Because I can't. So a lot of people I'll do a squeaky ball thing, but I can't hold my camera and pay attention and do all of that and hold a squeaky thing or a toy thing. So if I can put it in my mouth, I've got one that makes all sorts of weird and wonderful squeaky noises, and you get about 3 goes out of every single noise, and the dog will go up, or it will tilt its head, or it will do something cool, and then they're like, whatever, I've heard that one before.
Yeah, actually that reminds me, I did used to have an app on my phone which played all sorts of noises.
Yeah.
Quite fun. Okay, thank you. Someone has got a tip for a place with amazing hides. You should check out Zimanga. Does that? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that.
Yes, you are pronouncing that correctly. Yes, I am aware of Zimanga. I just haven't got there yet. It's on my list of places to go, but my list is ever longer. I don't know any of you guys who travel. Every time you travel, you think you tick one place off on your list, but you then speak to other people that are there, and you add about 3 or 4 things on the bottom.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's true. Right, someone says they're looking for a trip to Botswana right now.
Okay.
Do you have any opinions on the best places to go and any problems?
Okay.
Did you have any problems with baggage?
All right, so the only place I've been to in Botswana is Mashatu, and it was amazing. So I would happily recommend that. Right, baggage. Now, this is a common problem. This is a common question. Because one of the issues when you're on safari is the internal flight. So you get to Africa, it's not a problem. You fly BA, you've got 23 kilograms luggage allowance. BA's restriction on cabin baggage is the size of the bag, not the weight of it. As long as you can get it in the overhead bin, you're good. So my camera bag weighs 15 kilos, and my laptop bag weighs 3 kilos, and my clothes anything from 6 to 8 kilos. So what's most important? Your camera bag, right? Yeah. So on a lot of the internal flights, they will say that your luggage limit is 15 kilos. Yeah. And as my camera bag weighs 15 kilos, I can't do that. So if I'm traveling, and I'm usually traveling with a company called Wild Eye, and what they do is when on their trips, they buy sufficient freight seats to allow everybody about a 25 kilogram luggage allowance. Yeah. So it depends on who you're traveling with. But even if you aren't traveling with a photography company, on any of the internal flights, you can always buy a freight seat to increase your allowance. You just have to do that. It's usually cheaper to do that in advance than turning up at the airport and you've got twice the allowance that you're allowed to have, and then they're going to charge you through the nose for it. I have to say, I've turned up to many airports with more baggage than I should have had, and I've never yet had to pay more money. But you also have to remember that in every single lodge or camp that you stay in Africa, they have laundry facilities. So you only need the clothes that you're wearing and a couple of other sets of clothing, and jobs are good. And you don't need masses and masses and masses of stuff. Prioritize the camera gear. It's much more important. Okay,
thank you. I think, well, you mentioned taking a wide angle. Someone saying, is it a good idea to take a 16 to 35 on a safari trip?
Yes.
What sort of things do you photograph with it?
Things with a wide angle, big skies. Big skies and trees and anything else that you can put in front of it. Don't not take one. 15 to 35 is not going to weigh your camera. It's not going to make a massive difference to your camera bag. Taking the 400 out my bag would make a massive difference to my camera bag. So take your 15 to 35. And if you have a really fast lens, so one of the other things that I will regularly put in my camera bag, particularly if I'm going to the Wild Eye Mara camp, is I have a nifty 50, so a 50mm 1.8, because one of the evenings they have a cultural evening, and you can take pictures of the Masai guys and girls in their outfits beside beside the fire and stuff like that, and you can do some really cool stuff with bits of people, which is really unusual for me to point my camera at anything that is a person. So take what you have if you have it. Don't leave it behind, because you'll hate it. You'll find something that you need to take a picture of, and you won't have the thing that you want to use. But if you don't have a 15 to 35, you can do like wide angle with a longer lens. You just have to take loads of shots. So if you're trying to do a landscape orientation shot, you take portrait orientation. If you're trying to do a landscape orient shot, you take portrait orientation images like that with a third of an overlap. And if you're trying to do a portrait orientation shot, you take landscape images going like that with a third of an overlap. And you can do that and put them together in Lightroom.
Okay.
So you can, you can do all sorts of stuff if you don't have the right lens, unless it's not long enough. Then it's a little bit difficult.
And ideally, you want a tripod.
No.
Not for the to get accurate overlaps.
No. I do all my panels without a tripod.
Okay.
Never taken a tripod on a wildlife shoot. No, all of them are done without. In practice, it's like anything. Do it often enough. You just have, and usually when you're in a vehicle, whatever lens you're using, whatever camera you're using, you're resting it on a beanbag on something. So there is some stability. Tripods in vehicles don't work. There's lots of places.
I was thinking more of landscapes.
Okay, never done that. I have used all sorts of weird and wonderful things to put my camera on the ground or to prop it up against stuff, but no, never. Yeah, okay. No.
Okay. When you go on your photographic trips, do you use specific guides or travel companies?
Okay, so the company I travel the most often with is a company called Wild Eye South Africa. They're a South African company, and they travel all over Africa. And I've had lots of good experiences with them. Things have gone wrong on trips. So one trip I was on in, not through fault of their own, we were in Maniples in Zimbabwe, and they had unseasonal rain, and 20 centimeters of rain fell overnight, and we could not leave. And the guide just phoned the office and said, you're going to have to change everybody's international flights and sort it all out because we can't get signals. And they just sorted it all out and it was all solved. So if you're traveling, you have to, I would suggest you ask for recommendations. So you want to travel with people that other people recommend. You want to travel with a company that's got guides and some sort of office logistics staff, because then if something does go wrong, they have somebody to help them sort out things like international flights. Yeah, I would be very, very careful about traveling with someone who just is on their own and they're just organizing it all themselves, because they've got no backup. And if you're in the middle of Africa with no phone signal and something happens, it can be quite difficult to do fixing things like changing flights and that kind of stuff. I also have in January this year and last year, the trips to the Mara conservancies were with a gentleman called Paul Goldstein through Exodus, and he's a great guy to travel with as well. Okay, and again, he's in the UK and he uses either Exodus or some of the other travel companies in the UK to lead his to sort out his trips. But go by recommendation. Find somebody who's gone on a trip with X person or X company and they're happy with. Ask them about it. Ask them why they liked it. And if those are the same things that you're looking for, then that's a good idea for you to travel. And you're going to be spending a large amount of money, so do your research would be my recommendation.
Okay. Now you mentioned beanbags, so we have a couple of questions. Yep. Do you take your own beanbag?
No.
Do you take an empty beanbag? They're supplied, are they?
No. Yeah. If you go on a photography trip and the photographer, if there's not beanbags, then you're not on the right trip. The minimum they can, and please do not buy beanbags with polystyrene balls in them, because they're dreadful, because every single beanbag will burst at some point. And if you burst your beanbag and you throw a whole load of polystyrene balls all over the Masai Mara, they're not going to be very happy with you. Beanbags should be full of organic substances. So a lot of wildlife photographers put birdseed in their beanbags, because then they've got birdseed on hand every time they want it. Mine, when I'm using, so I have 2 beanbags in the boot of my car all the time, and they're filled with Tesco's cheap rice. Because that way, if they burst or if they get spilled or anything like that, rice is organic. It's going to just disappear. Any pulse that's going off in your kitchen will do fine. But beanbags have to be heavy. Polystyrene balls are awful. No polystyrene balls. If you're not going on a photography trip, then take an empty beanbag with you, because you can fill it with dirt if you have to, and it will work as a beanbag. It won't be pleasant when you're trying to empty it out and take it home again with you, but it's better than not having one at all.
Or you could use a sock. If you're really stuck,
yes. Or you can use all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff.
Not your favorite sock, but yeah.
So to do a time lapse before, I've propped up my iPhone with elephant poop, so you can use all sorts of weird stuff.
You don't want to be answering a call straight after that, do you? Right.
Well, it's dried out. It's just
Was
light.
there? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there, it did what I needed it to do.
Right. This is probably the second to last question. This person hemmed and hawed for ages between the R5 and R6, finally settled on the new R6 Mark II. She ask, aside from megapixels, did you find a big difference between the R5 and R6? Is the R6 much better in low light?
Right. Okay. So, good question. To be honest, I can't tell the difference when I had my R6 and my R5 in my hands. They're almost identical. There's a very slight difference in the resolution of the viewfinder, but again, not enough that I was noticing. The reason I have bought a second R5 is for the megapixels. That was the thing that made a difference. But the R6 too has more megapixels than the R6, so it's somewhere between the two. So you don't need to change to an R5. If you've got an R6 too, that's fine. What was the second part of the question? Oh, low light. Right. Okay. So I've read a huge amount on this, and one of the reasons I bought an R6 rather than a second R5 is because the R6 is meant to be better off because in low light, because it has less megapixels. Can't say I noticed any difference. But then other people might.
It's really subjective, isn't it? Well, it varies by where you're shooting, the specific type of light, and it also has an impact on the focusing in low light. And the R5 is brilliant, but I think the R6 is just that little bit more enthusiastic in the low light, shall we say? Very subtle.
I didn't notice any difference, and I once you get used to having 45 megapixels, particularly as a wildlife photographer, and also in pet photography, because it's the same situation, I'm trying to capture a pet that doesn't stay still, that doesn't do what it's supposed to do. So when I'm shooting with an R5, I can just not worry about it, because I know that I can take a headshot from a full body shot and still make it big enough for a client to have a big, huge piece of artwork on their wall. So it just means that I have to think about one less thing, and the less things I have to think about, the more able I am to be creative. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. So, and the final question, you've mentioned sunrise shots, sunset shots, easier for others to say, spotlighting, shooting at midday. When do you actually sleep?
On a trip. Sleep? What sleep? Right, so in the middle of the day, right? So when you go out on safari, you're usually out 6 o'clock in the morning. You're usually back about 11 o'clock. Lunch is about 2 o'clock. You go out again at maybe 4 o'clock. You stay out till about 7 o'clock. You have your dinner. You go to bed. Some people stay up late drinking. I don't do that. I go to bed, and quite often I'll have a snooze in the middle of the day if it's not too hot. I do not go on safari for a holiday. I usually need a holiday when I come back. It's just amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's absolutely fantastic. Everyone's really loved hearing from you.
Cool. And hopefully everybody's had some, so everybody can take maybe a little bit of something from that, hopefully, and maybe apply it.
I'm sure they will. Thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
You're very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.